Allan Lichtman joins me now. He's a presidential historian and distinguished professor at American University. He's also the author of this book, The Case for Impeachment. Allan, what did you make of what we heard from William Barr? Your take.
It was one of the most shameful episodes in American history. First of all, this press conference never should have been held. It was patently an attempt by the Attorney General to set in stone a very favorable narrative for the president before anyone in Congress or in the public had a chance to read the report as redacted and draw conclusions of their own. Secondly, this was not an impartial legal analysis. This was a blatantly political defense of the president. In fact, it could have been President Trump himself up there giving these very same talking points. He certainly did not stick to the law. He talked about poor President Trump, bedeviled with all of these investigations, frustrated with quote unquote illegal leaks. He's willing to say the leaks were illegal, but the obstruction was not illegal. It left out so many critical things. He said the president fully cooperated. Well, the president didn't cooperate with the most crucial piece of evidence for the special counsel, a personal interview with the president. He didn't even mention the fact that there were underlying crimes, that the chairman of the campaign, the deputy chairman of the campaign, the national security advisor were all indicted. And then he continually talked about no collusion, even though collusion is not a crime. That's his political take on the report. It was just shameful to see an attorney general just shilling politically for the president of the United States. It demeans everything this republic stands for. And remember, the whole point of an independent counsel investigation of the president and his associates historically is that it's supposed to be independent of the president and his political appointees like the attorney general. And instead, the attorney general has corrupted the independence of the investigation and, in a sense, taking it over.
Are you, and we'll get to the other things that Barr said, but are you surprised by Bill Barr? I mean, during the confirmation hearing, I think a lot of people that were skeptical about him sort of came around and thought, well, give him the benefit of the doubt. What we heard from him today, did it impact your thoughts around his credibility?
Yes and no. I was always suspect about Barr because he essentially submitted a single-space, 19-page memo, kind of a job interview to the president, denigrating the special counsel investigation. But I have to say, even with my skepticism, he went far, far beyond even what I suspected would be the worst way in which a political defender of the president could spin this investigation.
So he said that there were 10 episodes involving the president around obstruction of justice, saying that the report discusses potential legal theories for connecting these actions of elements of what an obstruction offense means. Those 10 things, what are you looking for in that report when it comes down, and how much detail will we get on those 10 elements?
Well, I hope we get full detail. There's no need to redact those. They don't have anything to do with national security or grand jury testimony. And I would like to see what Mueller had to say about those 10 episodes and their implications, not Attorney General Barr's spin on those. If anything, we should have been allowed to see them first so we could compare what Mueller had to say with William Barr's spin. Instead, he has now set the narrative, and anything that comes after is going to have to be done in the context of this corrupt political episode on the part of an attorney general who's supposed to be above this kind of politics.
What about Rod Rosenstein? I really wanted to read his thought bubble today as he was just standing there. Is he a player in this?
Who knows? We haven't heard a thing from Rod Rosenstein. But again, you know, putting the maximum political spin on everything, William Barr has tried to cloak himself in the prestige of Rod Rosenstein. And yet, you know, he looked like a man who, you know, had a hot poker stuck in his back. He looked as uncomfortable as someone possibly could standing behind that shameful political press conference by the Attorney General.
So here's how the president responded, and he did it on Twitter, and he used graphics this time to convey his thoughts on what happened. He said, with the Game of Thrones backdrop, game over. No collusion, no obstruction. For the haters and the radical left Democrats, game over. So, Allan, where do the Dems go from here now?
There's only one place to go. And I've been advocating this for a long time, and that is to begin an impeachment inquiry. Let us not forget that the same Attorney General doesn't believe the president can be indicted. So even if he found the crime of obstruction, there was nothing he can do about it. So now the responsibility rests in Congress.
Why bother? Why bother? We're going into an election year. The Republicans control the Senate.
Because it is the constitutional responsibility of the House not to consult a crystal ball and to decide what the Senate may or may not do, but to assess whether or not the president has committed impeachable offenses, which are not the same as a legal crime under Department of Justice guidelines. As Alexander Hamilton pointed out, impeachment involves actions detrimental to the society and abuse of power. And it's up to Congress to make that determination, and they can't do it without an impeachment investigation. Quite frankly, just from what is based on publicly known, much less what we'll see in those 10 episodes cited by the independent special counsel, I think there is a vastly stronger case on a much more important matter for obstruction of justice against Donald Trump than there was against Bill Clinton. And remember, virtually every Republican in the House voted for an article of impeachment on obstruction involving a consensual sexual affair, not the national security of the United States. And they did it even though they knew there was little chance he'd be convicted in the Senate.
What about Robert Mueller? The Democrats want the special counselor to testify before Congress. We, of course, have not heard from him. What could he add? What could he clarify at this point?
Well, I think he can clarify the differences between what he found and the Attorney General's spin on what he found. But let me stress in the strongest possible terms that this investigation has already been tainted and already been corrupted by the Attorney General and the President of the United States. As you can see, the President immediately jumped on this. If there's any collusion here, there was collusion between the Attorney General and the President, who are singing the same tune, and the Attorney General went way beyond just a legal analysis to parrot the political talking points of the President.
This is exactly what President Trump wanted, though, and he didn't get it from Jeff Sessions, and he got it.
He got his Roy Cohen.
Yeah.
He got a lawyer who was willing to corrupt himself and to do whatever it takes, just like Roy Cohen did for the reprehensible Joseph McCarthy, to do whatever it takes to protect your so-called client, not to fulfill your responsibilities as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. We've now had an Attorney General who is nothing more than a Roy Cohen.
Allan Lichtman, presidential historian and author of The Case for Impeachment. Thank you, Allan.
Thank you.